What does Putin get from Snowden for protecting him? Here's a clip.
Either Joe Biden is the
that's
most
not
clever person in the world and did nothing wrong.
Whoops. Looks like I messed it up. We're doing it live. Oh, no, there we go. What's going on here? What is going on here? We're doing it live, folks. We're doing it live.
The average skeptical person who's paranoid would I think it'd be a...
Let's go back and redo this for the YouTube clip. Sorry about that. I don't know what even happened there. Just played the wrong clip. What does Putin get from Snowden for protecting him? Let's play a clip.
The average skeptical person who's paranoid would I think it'd be a fair question to ask, knowing how Putin is, and for Snowden to live in Russia feeling safe, why would he be safe? Does Putin follow the guidance of whistleblower protection, whatever, or is he keeping him safe because Snowden is giving him information? You know, these are very honest questions that some people are wondering.
Yep.
Why is Snowden safe in Russia, led by a guy like Putin?
So let me explain this. So
Interesting question.
First of all, the idea that Snowden would give information that would help another country surveil on its citizens in order to be kept out of prison or worse is inconsistent with everything that Snowden did in his life. When we were working with Snowden in Hong Kong, I would say the percentage chance that we assigned to the fact that at the end of that process, he was going to end up in American custody in an orange jumpsuit and we were never going to hear from him again because he would be disappeared to a supermax prison for the next 40 years. We had a probability of 90 to 95%. That was it was a miracle that he escaped the clutches of the American government. That happened through a series of very improbable acts. So Snowden already proved he would be willing to go to prison, give up his liberty for the rest of his life in order to make it much more difficult for states to surveil. Having shown that he's willing to go to prison to prevent surveillance, why would he then turn around weeks later and make the exact opposite calculation that I'm willing to help the Russians surveil in order to stay out of prison? That makes no sense. That's the first. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is when there was a time, you know, and I know this is a long ago history, but when Snowden picked Hong Kong because it was kind of a city of resistance to him, of resistance to Chinese tyranny, but it was also a place he knew that the U.S. government would have a hard time getting us. So it was kind of he put a lot of thought into the place that he wanted us to work with him. And at the time, people were saying he was a Chinese spy because he had gone to Hong Kong. When he ended up leaving Hong Kong, his intention was to go to South America, where he was getting asylum either in Bolivia or Ecuador. He was going to fly through Moscow on his way to Havana and then onto Latin America. And the Biden administration, or rather the Obama administration, and they boast about this, bullied the Cubans and said, if you want a deal to get rid of that embargo, no chance if you allow Snowden safe passage.
They never got rid of the embargo, did they?
You
still can't get cigars
in the Moscow airport. He spent 48 days trapped in the Moscow airport in this international zone before they would let him into Moscow. And the whole time, I was certain that the U.S. would be able to offer the Russians whatever they wanted because they were desperate to get their hands on Snowden. I don't know if you remember, but they thought that he was on the plane of the Bolivian president, Evo Morales. They had a hunch when he was coming back from Russia. They forced down the plane of a sovereign president, Evo Morales, on the hunch that he had Snowden on that plane with him when he was coming back. That's how badly they wanted Snowden. So I thought, okay, they're going to offer the Russians, we have, 12 Russian prisoners that you want back. We're willing to give them to you. We're willing to make this concession, that concession. I thought for sure that was going to happen, and it didn't happen. I went to Moscow the next year. I met with Snowden. I did a panel with some Russian media and Russian government officials.
A Wikipedia entry on that. Evo Morales grounding incident. Yeah, it's interesting. On July 1st, 2013, President Evo Morales of Bolivia, who had been attending a conference of gas exporting countries in Russia, gave an interview to RT television network in which he appeared predisposed to offer asylum to Edward Snowden. Okay. forced landing. According to Australian statements, the pilots requested emergency landing due to issues with fuel level indicators, causing inability to confirm there was sufficient fuel to continue flight. Interesting. Oh, sorry, Austria, not Australia, right? Austrian, yeah, sorry about that. Austria's deputy counselor, Michael Spendeliger, said that the plane was searched, although the Bolivian defense minister denied a search took place. Interesting. Saying Morales had denied entry to his plane. The request for entry into French, Spanish, and Italian airspace, ostensibly for technical reasons, strongly denounced by Bolivia, Ecuador, and other South American nations, were attributed to rumors disseminated by the U.S. that Snowden was on board. Spanish Minister of Foreign Affairs Jose Garcia Margallo publicly stated that. Then it cuts off. How interesting.
And I was asking everybody that, why couldn't that deal be reached? Why didn't they make a deal for Snowden? And what they told me were two things. Number one, the U.S. and the Russian political class hate each other so much going back for decades that they would rather, avoid deals in their interest than make deals in their interest. But the real reason is that Putin could not give Snowden back to the U.S. It would be considered a deeply un-Russian thing to do, because one of Russia's kind of national attributes is they have always been a refuge for dissidents from the West. You do something against the West, you get refuge in Russia. That's something that's crucial politically to Russians, to their sense of their identity. And there was just no way Putin politically, I know he's considered a totalitarian. He's not a totalitarian in the sense of, North Korea or Saudi Arabia. He answers to political classes. There are dissidents in Russia. There are oppositional parties. And it's just too contrary to how Russia functions and operates. Finally, Snowden wasn't traveling with the archive. He knew not to travel internationally with the archive. Not only didn't he have the archive, but the passwords that he had were scattered around the world because he wanted to avoid, even if someone tried to torture him, being able to give access to that information, because he had already proven he was willing to have the worst possible outcome happen to him rather than give up information. Why are you skeptical of that?
I don't know. So for me, okay, so let's just say my daughter is 22 years old, okay? And one of my guys I've known who is 40 years old, okay, who is a full-blown playboy, okay? Mm-hmm. And my daughter says, Dad, he's just a friend, And I'm like, baby, I trust you. I don't trust him. Uh-huh. He's going to flirt with you. And he's very good at getting you to flip and, fall in love with them for a night or whatever. Let's just say that guy's not a friend. He's a colleague, but I know who his DNA is, right? Okay. Even worse, if he's not an ally and he's an enemy and he wants to find a way to do something to you and he's going to figure out any ways to go do that to you. Okay. In this situation, let's just say I trust Snowden. I don't trust Putin. And if we were to give an asset, if America, Joe Biden, got Brittany Griner for Victor, what's his last name, Bout, or, Victor, however he says his last name.
Killer.
Right. You mean to tell me Putin couldn't have said, you give me Victor, I'll give you Snowden? Yeah, I mean, Victor's pretty powerful to have that.
Why didn't that happen? They had Snowden in their clutches in that international airport. Yeah. Why didn't they reach a deal with the Americans
I'll tell you my opinion
give
why.
Us everything and we'll give you Snowden
back? But I'll tell you why I wouldn't do it. If you're Putin, Snowden is way more powerful to have than Victor Bout. So it's like saying, hey, let's trade cards. I'll give you a Mickey Mantle rookie card for a freaking John Cangelosi rookie card. You're going to say, who the hell is John Cangelosi? I'm going to say, well, go look him up. He was a second baseman who hit 230 or whatever he was, right? Okay. So, yeah, you're not going to give Mickey for John Cangelosi. This is Mickey Mantle, Snowden. You need Snowden. You need
because
that.
Of his secrets.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Okay, but let me ask you this. So
this is your world. I want to know your art because you're the right guy to talk about.
No, absolutely. I know Snowden extremely well. So why do we know the name of Edward Snowden? Why do people around the world consider what Snowden did to be heroic? The reason is because what he did was extremely likely to result in the imprisonment for the rest of his life at the age of 29. Not very many people.
They would have killed him.
Or death.
Exactly.
His life, 100%, just like you.
The best case scenario,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They were threatening to imprison me and Laura Poitras, the reporter with whom I was working. So imagine what they would have done to Snowden. The sky was the limit. Look at what they're doing to Julian Assange. Snowden knew that. Snowden took that risk. When I first talked to Snowden, I said to him, look, I didn't know how much he knew. I didn't know how sophisticated it was. I didn't know his age, but I felt like it was my responsibility as a journalist, thinking maybe I'm dealing with somebody with mental health issues, with some kind of skewed vision. I made very clear to him, I said, look, you're committing multiple serious felonies. This is the greatest national security leak in the history of the United States. You understand you're almost definitely going to end up in an American prison, and not a nice American prison, for the rest of your life.
Mo.
He said, that's the risk I've already decided that I'm willing to take. So already Snowden is somebody operating with a completely different moral framework than the vast majority of people, including most of us. I'm not somebody who's saying I'm willing to, I did take risks, but my risk wasn't anywhere near the risk that Snowden took. I was the journalist, I had First Amendment protections, lots of other different considerations. So he had just proven
Snowden was a whistleblower.
he's
not
willing
a
to go to
journalist.
prison for the rest of his life in pursuit of this cause being preventing the internet from becoming this zone of mass surveillance.
Sure, yeah.
Why a month later, Putin comes to him, or whoever, the FSB comes to him and says, you give us this information or we're removing that asylum and we're going to let the Americans take you to prison. Why does he then a month later make exactly the opposite moral calculation and say, you know what, actually, I don't want to go to prison enough to give you this information. I'd rather give you this information and avoid prison. He just proved he was willing to go to prison for the rest of his life in order to not help a state be able to further surveil. So
for my opinion on what he's saying is, I get where he's coming from, but if Snowden gave Putin the stuff, Snowden just wanted it to be out there so everyone knew about it. So he could have just given Putin extra information. You know, he makes a good point. He doesn't care about going to prison. Yeah, but all he wanted is it to be out there. So, it's already out there. So he might just be like, okay, I'll give you a few extra things. Who cares? We'll just put it out eventually. And he wouldn't want, he would have put everything out in America and stayed in America if he could have just not went to prison in America.
Idea that he would have given this information to Putin to stay out of an American prison or a Russian prison is totally, again, the fact that he didn't end up in American prison was the biggest fluke possible. The government of Hong Kong stuck its middle finger up at the United States when the United States demanded that he not be able to leave for its own reasons. Snowden had proven that the U.S. was spying on Hong Kong. His moral framework, the one under which he was operating, the reason it's heroic is because it's so radically different than the one that we rationally. So why would why would the United States government's threats not deter Snowden from leaking that information, but the Russian government's threats would make him give up information to help the Russians spy better on their own citizens?
Because Russians didn't destroy his life. American government did, because Russia didn't destroy his life. America did. So to me, look, I'm just a naturally curious guy that's asking questions from a guy that's you're the expert in this. You're the one that knows more about this than anybody else because you were the guy that broke the story. So I'm talking to the source. Right. Yeah, no, for me, I think it's a healthy level of skepticism to have with that. By the way, I am thankful for Snowden. I'm thankful for what he did. I'm grateful for what he did. I'm in levels that words can't even describe. God knows what he did. He ruined his life, man. He would say at 29 years old. There's a level of patriotism that goes with that, but it's complicated as well, right? It's always the whistleblower from the other side you hate. You always like the whistleblower from your side.
Right.
So it's easy to be like, well, can't believe what he's doing. And you saw everybody on the media, this is not something he should be doing. If you love America, you should not be supporting what Snowden's. I don't know if you remember that. CNN was saying it, and everybody was saying that at that time.
Of course I remember
that clearly.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, why is he there? With a Putin's camp approach and say, for the rest of your life, you're protected as if you're a president. We're going to give you that kind of protection for the rest of your life. And if you're not going to give us any intel that's already public, maybe teach us mechanisms on how they were investigating on the people
Interesting.
for us to know how to investigate, and maybe his moral compass doesn't hurt him to say, well, I'm not really doing anything. I'm just going to show you how they did it, and then you do whatever you want to do with it, but this is how the government was investigating on its people. Maybe that's something where he's like, I don't feel bad about doing something like this. I don't know.
I totally get the skepticism, and from
Yeah.
the distance, I'd likely have the same, questions. The issue, of course, is I can't prove the negative,
Sure,
right?
totally.
So I can't
I get
prove
it.
to you
Yeah.
Snowden didn't do it. All I can tell you is I have, I spent a lot of time, like very intense, immersive time with Snowden. In all of those days we were in Hong Kong doing this work. I've maintained a very close friendship with him since. I talk to him, with a great amount of regularity. And that's not a particularly persuasive thing to say, take my word for it. I understand Snowden's ethical code. I think the only thing I can ask people to do is look at the actual evidence of what his conduct has been. And the other thing is, there is that Russian code that I know that I didn't understand until I went and talked to a bunch of people. But if you look at the Cold War, whenever there were people who felt persecuted by Western governments or who became spies, they always were given refuge in Russia from the West for as long as they wanted to until the day that they died. It's a part of the Russian moral code. I talked to the head of RT, on whom I was with a panel, and I asked
The difference is the Cold War is over, though, and they didn't even went to Ukraine or anything. So Russia and the United States were allies. So I guess they're code, but they, like you just said, if they're spies, well, of course. I mean, what would America do during the Cold War, right? If Russian people became like double agents and we're going to spy on Russia for you, of course they're going to give them protection if they get caught. But that was in the Cold War.
that question. I
long time ago.
interrogated her about that because I genuinely didn't understand why the U.S. and Russia didn't reach a deal to turn Snowden over. And that was what she was trying to get me to understand, was it would be a very un-Russian thing to do, to take a political dissident who wants refuge in Russia and turn them over to the United States. It's not something that you can understand if that's not part of the code.
You ever been to Crustaceans in Beverly Hills, the restaurant?
Probably not.
Okay. Would love to take you. It's incredible. Unbelievable food. They have two kitchens there.
Uh-huh.
One of them is the kitchen for the On family. Okay, the recipes that they've created, like their garlic noodles, which when you eat, you age backwards. It's like Benjamin Button. The other kitchen is for the average people to go in, people like you and I, okay, if we work there. You cannot go in the kitchen unless if you're part of the On family, okay? So what does this mean? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Russia is thankful for it, but listen, you ain't Russian, bro. You know what I'm saying? You're Snowden. So there's a level of skepticism I think a president or any prime minister would have for anyone that's a whistleblower, because in the back of the mind of that prime minister or president is, this guy's a whistleblower. You know what I'm saying? I mean, great job for what you did, but shit. You could whistleblow on anybody.
Yeah.
So we got to be also protective of your abilities to whistleblow. I don't know if you understand, like if I'm communicating my thoughts properly or not.
For sure.
They
don't trust him.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, no, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
What,
like you know how a guy that says something like this. Okay, he'll say, "Look, just between us, okay, just between us," and then you test him 3 times, and you leak him information, inaccurate information, and then he tells 3 other people. Guess what he just did? He just validated to you he can't keep information. And it's not hard to test stuff like this with people. It's very easy. If I do it on a small level with a company or a sales organization or family or friends, like anytime I wanted to know which one of my friends that I went to high school with, I just would talk to them. I would tell them certain private things, and I would say, just please keep it between us. If I got 3 people that called me, I already knew who that guy was.
Right.
Okay. So either I intentionally leak information that I want to be leaked, or I just realize you can't fully
trust that person.
You cannot.
No,
So,
and that's interesting. You know, when first of all, I think the starting point for all of this discussion should always be, why is it that Edward Snowden, having not only leaked information, but done so in the most responsible way, right? Like he could have sold the information to a foreign government and gotten millions and millions of dollars. That archive was extremely valuable.
That is true.
He could have dumped it all over the internet. Instead, he came to us, and when he came to us, he was adamant that we agree to conditions that I even found repressive about how he didn't want any information published that could ever even potentially put a single person in harm's way. He was a very conservative whistleblower. He imposed on us a lot of restrictions about things that I thought we should have been able to publish that he didn't want published. There were things the New York Times ended up publishing from that archive that he was indignant about, that he thought should never have been published, about how we spy on China. So he was somebody who did this in the most responsible way possible, didn't dump it on the internet, didn't sell it to a foreign adversary, came to journalists, asked us to curate it in a very responsible way, which we did. There was no suggestion that anything we ever published harmed anybody, put anybody in harm's way. The first question should be, why is somebody like that forced to live their life in exile in Russia? Because the minute they come back to the United States, they're going to be put in prison for the rest of their life. Having said that, I understand your question. Again, I can't prove the negative. I guess all I can tell you is that even the information that Snowden would have to give, Snowden was not the deputy director of the NSA. Snowden was a somewhat low-level contractor who worked at Booz Allen. What he had that was valuable was access to the archive, where was the documents and not so much what Snowden had to say. Most of our reporting was based on the documents.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to that archive, there's not much that Snowden can even give you that's of value. And he wasn't carrying with him the archive and thumb drives with a piece of paper that contained the password. He purposely made it extremely difficult because he didn't want to be put in the position where somebody could force him to turn over that information.
Look, I will tell you on this topic, and we can transition to the next topic.
Sure.
But I appreciate you, having this exchange with me on this topic.
It's interesting because couldn't they torture him or threaten his family or something, and then he'll just go get the passwords and thumb drives where, he knows they are. I'm not disagreeing with him. I don't know one way or the other, but it's an interesting question to ask.
This isn't about Snowden. I'm not putting this on Snowden.
Right, you're on Putin.
I'm putting this on how Putin views an American. Dude, you're not priority to me. You're not Russian. This is not your motherland. You don't love this place like I love it. Gorbachev, Yeltsin, this is like the greatest country in the world. He views that. I mean, Putin is a
Russian nationalist.
A Russian nationalist. So for him, he's going to always, and by the way, the best leaders ever are typically more paranoid and skeptical than the average leader. If I can come and betray you once and kind of do it again and again and again, you're weak. But if I can come and betray you once and you still are able to entertain a relationship, but there's filters that you can't go through certain rails, certain things you can't enter anymore, I respect that leader. And I put Putin as a formidable leader. I don't put Putin as a lightweight. I don't put Putin as he wants to be complimented and you can win him over with flattery. He's not weak. He's a true G who he is. But I trust my enemies way more than I trust my allies. And here's what I mean by that. I know my competitors, anytime I built any businesses, whether it was insurance or whatever I did, I knew my enemy woke up every morning wanting to put me out of business. I respect that. I knew my enemy woke up every day wanting to make sure I went bankrupt. I respect that. I'm not upset at it. I actually totally get it. If you play, you're fighting somebody in the streets, guess what the guy is going to do? You have to assume the guy wants to beat the living crap out of you, right? So that's not a naive or place coming from where it's like, well, I'm trying to be antagonistic. No, I just think this is the enemy. Here's how he views it.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one,
it's a very, very interesting conversation. Yeah, I don't know one way or the other. I could see Snowden maybe giving him stuff. It is a good question. Like, what is he giving him? Is it just Putin's just, okay, I don't like the West, and it's a refuge? Or, yeah, maybe he did give him stuff here and there. Or maybe he does. And I could see just Putin keeping him there just to piss off America, though. I mean, I guess. It's like, hey, look at, we have some leverage over you. And I guess also, what if they ever did do a deal? What if they really needed something from the United States? Hey, you want Snowden back? Hey, you want us to leave Ukraine and, but we got Snowden. At this point, the United States I don't think would care about Snowden that much. But it is interesting he's been there for so long and they've kept him there. But nowadays, yeah, I mean, if I could see Putin saying that, hey, if you want us to end the war in Ukraine, you give us the Donbass region, okay, and then we give you Snowden. They'll be like, hell no. No, we don't care about Snowden. We care about BlackRock now. I mean, we've moved. That ship has sailed. So then, what is Putin going to do? Just kill Snowden? It's just like, okay, that's not a good look either, And yeah. And then he does lose some leverage because maybe the U.S. doesn't care now, but maybe they care later. I don't know. It is a very interesting question, though. That is for sure. But how do you know the answer to it? Nobody really knows. But it's an interesting conversation. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe for daily news updates, smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and share your thoughts on the story in the comments below. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.